Hello, everybody. You have to watch this. The BBC has done it again. This publicly funded organization that you run, effectively, you run with your tax money called the license fee, seems to be competing with itself in terms of just how low it can stoop every day. And in the process, this once reputed organization keeps falling into the dark and bottomless pit of ignominy and utter disgrace. So, what's the matter today? Just moments ago, Hamas released 4 Israeli soldiers that it had taken prisoners of war on 7th of October. Those released are identified as Karina Ariev, Daniela Gilbao, Nama Levy, and Liri Olbag. I did a video on them last night. You can watch it here. They were taken captive on 7th of October by Hamas fighters from the Nehal Oz military base, built by the settler colony of Israel on Palestinian land. The BBC, just like any other media outlets such as Sky, CNN, Al Jazeera, and many others from around the world, decided to cut live, uninterrupted, to cover this event. The BBC spoke to a series of its representatives who are based in Jerusalem, Cairo, and elsewhere, but not in Gaza. In fact, even the person that it describes as its Gaza correspondent, that chap has been everywhere except in Gaza. Last week he was reporting from Istanbul, and today he was in Cairo. So much for being a Gaza correspondent. But I'll come to this chap in a bit. BBC first spoke to Yolande Nell, who has previously faced plenty of criticism for her questionable reporting on the Gaza conflict. Then the BBC decided to speak to its Middle East correspondent called Sebastian Usher. The presenter told Sebastian that this must be a very difficult time for those Israeli soldiers, even though they had big smiles on their faces and looked incredibly happy and well-fed. Moreover, they were dressed in brand new military fatigues. They waved the goodie bags that Hamas fighters had provided them as parting gifts. But for this BBC presenter, these soldiers must be going through a difficult time. After all, Israelis have to be shown as victims all the time, isn't it? That's the typical BBC playbook for you. Anyway, Sebastian Usher disagreed with his own BBC presenter, as he highlighted that Israeli soldiers being released today looked happy and well-fed. The point that they appeared well-fed was important here. Why? Because Israelis, with the help of their Western allies, such as the US and the UK, have been starving Palestinians to death in the last 15 months. Sebastian's first point of disagreement with the presenter was that these Israeli soldiers must be happy more than anything else. Then he said that Israeli soldiers looked in good health, and he laid special emphasis on this point. And even before he could highlight more facts that could potentially project Hamas in a positive light and demolish BBC's own propaganda, boom, he was gone. BBC had abruptly lost its live connection with Sebastian Usher, its own correspondent. So much for being an impartial news organization. Anyway, watch it for yourself.
So, Sebastian, we can now see there are some women who have been brought out. Let's just have a listen to the sound that we can hear from there, because there are, of course, a lot of people there in Palestine Square in Gaza City, and lots of cameras up taking pictures. Those women there do seem to be smiling on their faces, but they're being walked, surrounded by those Hamas fighters, over to the Red Cross vehicles. You can see that they are having their flags, and they're actually now moving them up to the stage. And Sebastian, this must be a really difficult time for those hostages as they are paraded by the Hamas fighters.
Well, I mean, there must be a huge amount of emotions, obviously, that are going through their heads. I mean, more than anything is happiness that they are being released. I mean, we're seeing that on their faces now. You'll see that they are all dressed in their army fatigues. They all look in good health, it has to be said. They're walking together.
Yes, so you can see that they waived the four hostages who have been released. This is Karina Ariev, Daniela Gilboa, Nama Levy, and Lariri Albag.
It must have been a technical error, right? I get that. These technical errors are, after all, almost exclusively reserved for those moments when people start to make sense on the BBC. Anyway, the BBC then shifted its attention to someone it calls its Gaza correspondent, Rushdie Abu Alouf, who is currently based in Cairo. He clearly knows what his employer wants to hear. Up until now, everyone, including the presenter and even Yolande Nell, had described Hamas as fighters. But trust BBC's so-called Gaza correspondent reporting from Cairo to start addressing Hamas as militants, and how Hamas fighters had worked hard to stage today's event to showcase its power to the world.
Let me bring in our Gaza correspondent, Rushdie Abalouf, who is in Cairo. Rushdie, we are seeing similar but slightly more calm and organised the handover today of these four hostages.
Yes, simply because Hamas has been working very hard for the last week since the ceasefire began to produce this image. I mean, we have seen them from very early morning taking control of the square, deploying police forces around it, restricting most of the movement for cars into the square, and then tens of Hamas militants and fighters were taking up positions around the place, securing the place, trying to show that we are back, we are in control, we are ready to continue ruling Gaza, as some of their supporters were posting in social media this morning.
Today's developments also showed that the US, the UK, and other Western countries who bankrolled brutal slaughtering of hundreds of thousands of innocent Palestinians have been lying to us all these months. They told us that Israelis were targeting Hamas and had degraded their military capability. You only have to look at the drill and other movements in the video of Hamas fighters to understand that they remain as powerful as before, even though they may have lost some of their prominent leaders. Also, today's development has come as a slap to those who said that Hamas fighters had raped Israelis on 7th of October. They held 4 Israeli female soldiers captive for 15 months. And yet, these women looked happy and healthy even after spending 15 months in Hamas captivity. And what's more, they are waving those goodie bags that Hamas fighters have provided to them as if they are at their graduation ceremony. So UN experts and other agencies were absolutely right when they debunked this claim earlier.
I mean, first of all, because you're talking about social media, yes, indeed, you've seen the photo, and it was at Kibbutz Be'eri. It was at Kibbutz Be'eri, and if you read the section of the report, starting with paragraph 62, we say what we have been able to verify, and that we went there because of the attention paid to Kibbutz Be'eri and sexual violence. And I have mentioned in my report at least 2 allegations previously reported that we found to be unfounded, and we explained that it's due to either new superseding information or inconsistency in the information gathered, including first responder testimonies, photographic evidence, and other information. And I give two examples. Yes, we found it to be unfounded.
Today's developments further corroborate that fact. What it proves is that Israelis are liars. Their supporters in the Western countries are liars, just like the creation of the settler colony built on stolen land. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. The details are there in the description of this video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.